How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to the NOLA Prep Friday night post-game show. Spencer Urquhart here after a wild night of Friday night football. Week one in the books. Glad to get week one out of the way. We still got a lot of games up. This is the New Orleans area after all. We got some games Saturday, so we're not through yet, but it was just great to be back in action, to have the games count. Had jamborees last week, but this week they counted for real, and we had some interesting results. And so we're live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Appreciate everyone that's tuned in here. And so we've got our high school writers here, my coworkers, colleagues. It's always fun to chop it up with them. We're going to bring them on here. Joe Halm of the St. Tammany Farmer and Chris Dabe of the Times-Picayune. We'll bring you guys on here. How y'all doing tonight?
Doing good. Glad the season's finally here.
Still vertical, so it's a good thing.
Right on. So I guess we'll start with you, Chris. You were at this week's game of the week, man. Shaw Carr ended up a little lopsided on the scoreboard, but I'm sure it was a good bit of action there. Talk to us about what happened there over on the West Bank.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that stood out in this game. One was the Carr defense. Obviously, they gave up no points in a 35-0 win. But the big thing was they didn't give up a first down until after halftime. And in fact, the first 3 first downs they gave up were on penalties. So they didn't give up anything rushing or passing. The first down they gave up, either of those ways, was on a fake punt pass in the final play of the third quarter. So this defense dominated. They got 4 power conference commitments. They got 2 of them going to LSU. So I think that's going to be kind of the name of the game for Carr this year. Last year it was the explosive offense with those receivers that were all going to big colleges. This year it's the defense, and it showed. The other thing that stood out was the run game for Carr. They're needing more on their running backs than they had last year. Like I said, with the receivers they had, they could throw it all over the place. This time it's a little more of a grinded out type of team. Trey Garrison, nickel state commitment, he ran for a couple of touchdowns in the first half, both in the second quarter. He didn't play the second half because of cramping, but they got a second back and a third back who can come in. Well, our team from last year, but any team should win a lot.
I believe Chris kind of cut out there. He was saying about the Carr running game being strong there. I know one of the other backs there that's really good is Jermon Macklin. Chris had just talked about Trey Garrison, the Nichols commit, who's also very good. But hopefully Chris will all right, you're back now, I believe. You had anything else to say about the game?
Yeah, Trey Garrison was the lead back in the first half, ran for a couple of touchdowns there in the second quarter, and then he didn't play the second half, but they had Jermon Macklin and Jarrell McGee came in and did just as good in the second half. So this is a good run-based team on offense and a very solid, powerful defense that's not going to give up many points this year.
For sure. Yeah, I believe Richard Anderson missed the jamboree last week, a big number 7 LSU commit. Was he back in action tonight?
Yeah, he did play, and I think last week him not being in the jamboree was just a precaution.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, of course, he's one of their many college commitments, along with Aiden Hall in the secondary, another LSU commitment, and they've got 2 really good cornerbacks, Hayward Howard, Texas commitment, and Maurice Williams, Colorado commitment. Yeah, we could spend all night talking about Carr's college commitments. That team is loaded. Anything you noticed from Shaw, Chris, before we move on from that one? I know the scoreboard didn't do him much favors, but what did you take away from the Eagles tonight?
You're kind of breaking up there, but the Shaw defensively did play very well in the first half. Hank Tierney even said it after the game, for it to be 14-0 at halftime was a little bit of a miracle, he thought, considering that Shaw couldn't pick up any first downs. The defense was having to spend so much time on the field, and yet they did force a turnover on the first Carr possession. They did force Carr to punt a few times there early on. So they were doing the job, but you get out there, you got to put a defense out there too many times against a good what seems to be a good run team like Carr, eventually you're gonna wear down, and I think that's what happened with Shaw tonight. But big picture wise for Shaw, they're going to be okay. I mean, they played St. Augustine and Jamboree last week, Carr tonight, so that those might be the two most physical teams they play all year, and so they're certainly going to have plenty of time to recover and have a good season. Last year they lost to Carr and they lost to Rummel, and they won every other game and won the state championship. Maybe they can do that again this year.
For sure. Yeah, matchup of defending state champions there on the West Bank, Carr and Shaw. So this will transition to the North Shore, Joe. Talking about where you were at, I believe, Fountain Blue Lake Shore. How'd that one go down?
Lakeshore is really good. I don't know if y'all know that, but I'll put you on notice now. They opened the game with a 16-play drive. It took 9 minutes, ended up with a field goal, and it just kept going from there. They were up 17-0 at half. They scored 4 touchdowns in the third quarter. Brody Loudermilk really came into his own in that third quarter at quarterback. He's their junior who's taken over for Bo Bernard, did a great job. But I think for me, the thing that stood out and that I'm writing about in Post to NOLA soon is that Fountain Blue only had 10 plays in the first half, offensive plays in the first half. It took Ethan Galliano 6 plays to record 2 sacks and a tackle for a loss on defense. That's how well scouted Brett Indes had this Fountain Blue offense, and Lakeshore just came and made a statement today. It was really impressive to watch. Fountain Blue only had 24 yards at halftime. They only had 2 first downs at the end of the third quarter. They scored a late touchdown against the second team to avoid the shutout. But Lakeshore they put on a show tonight, and I mean they're for real, and they'll get a real test next week. Spencer and I were talking about this before we came on. They're going to Chalmette, and that's going to be one of the funner games in the area just to watch. It's really going to be 2 good teams right there. So I was impressed with pretty much everything Lakeshore did tonight, offensively, defensively. Heck, they even kicked a 27-yard field goal. So they did it in all 3 phases of the game.
Good deal. Yeah, great win for Lakeshore there, as well as Chalmette. They meet each other next week, so Chalmette was able to defeat John Eyre there 35-0. Owls will be back at home next week coming off that big quarterfinals run from last season. Coach Jason Tucker's got them looking pretty good, it looks like. So, but yeah, I was at Country Day Haynes, which was an interesting matchup from the standpoint that Country Day coach Ben Powell was Haynes' coach last year and led Haynes to a strong regular season undefeated and then a playoff appearance, which their football program wasn't really accustomed to. He's now at Country Day. But got to give Haynes credit tonight. He played Country Day really tough. That was a back-and-forth contest. Country Day, though, ended up pulling it off 28-21 at the newly renovated Freedom Field over at Country Day. Got the new turf field there installed. So that was a good game. It was back and forth. The end was a little challenging for both sides. A lot of cramps, a lot of penalties, but Country Day was able to complete enough big plays to get it done. An interesting nugget from that game. Hudson Wright, their normal starting quarterback, was not active. He had suffered a concussion last week in a jamboree and was still in the protocols. So they had to go with Alan Dietz, I believe is how he says his name. He was really strong through 2 touchdown passes and 244 yards. A lot of the stars from Country Day's basketball team stood out in this one. Curtis McAllister, Deuce's son, 2 big catches. And then the 2 touchdowns were by Herman Dyson. He had the long one, a 65-yard touchdown. And then a fade to Kellen Brewer, Corey Brewer's son, was the one that I believe gave Country Day the 2-score lead, put them up 28-14. And Haynes had a late score to start the fourth, but the rest of the way was the defense. The defense has stepped up toward the end. So thought that one was a pretty interesting one there. So let's look at some area scores here. We're going to keep talking here on the NOLA Preps Friday night football postgame show. Appreciate everyone for watching here. We got the scoreboard here below. We had some interesting results there. Catholic Baton Rouge was able to hold off Destrehan there 32-23. Brother Martin with the comeback win against East Ascension 29-22. LCA holds off Rummel 27-26. Holy Cross by the skin of their teeth beats E.D. White 27-26. Talk about Lakeshore. Mandeville defeats Salmon 38-25. John Curtis out in Los Angeles handles Cathedral by a lot of points there. And in the upset of the week, Slidell over Lutcher. So, yeah. Anything stand out to you there, Chris, from those area scores? Are you there, Chris?
Anything stand out?
Oh, yeah. From the,
yeah, you kind of broke up there for a second. I don't know, a couple of things kind of stand out. Seeing Holy Cross win at E.D. White, that seems pretty notable to me. Last year they played E.D. White and lost that game, and that's a team that won 3 games last year, didn't make the playoffs. So for Holy Cross, it's good to see them go down there to E.D. White and get a win there against a team that played in the Dome last year. So that's a pretty nice win for them. And then seeing some of the other scores down here. I know Rummel played a close game there at LCA, and I think that's kind of to be expected in a matchup like that. And then they lost by 1, but Brother Martin winning at East Ascension. Hearing the score updates throughout the night, seems like that was a back and forth, pretty tough ball game, and that also is to be expected. They played a close game last year, so seeing Holy Cross and Brother Martin get a couple of wins on the road like that, and then all the points that John Curtis put up, 54 points. That Cathedral team out there in Los Angeles, that's a team that won 10 games last year. So I'm assuming they're playing some pretty decent competition. So real nice start for John Curtis, and hopefully they can enjoy the rest of the weekend out there, maybe do some sightseeing and make that trip really worthwhile.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they will. I'm sure it'll be a little more fun getting that big win there. Yeah, that's quite the journey there for John Curtis, but I'm sure they're having a great time out west. So, yeah, good stuff. And Joe, talking about your thoughts on that Slidell upset, man, just how significant is that for that program?
They took so many lumps last year because they were so young. They started a bunch of sophomores and juniors, and those sophomores went straight from freshman football to varsity football, and I think they really grew from that. There's 2 ways you can go. You can get down on yourself, or you can get tougher. And I think they showed that they got a lot tougher. That was a game that I sort of had circled because I've been high on Slidell all postseason. They have a lot of talent. Quan Jones is good. I think Ricky Williams is a good quarterback. Flemings and Birdlow can catch the ball. And they showed tonight that they can play a little bit of defense. So that win at home is huge for them. I'm waiting on the story from Dave Woodall to get all the details. That'll be up on NOLA later today, or later this evening. I think that's probably the biggest win that's not a surprise to me. The other game, Mandeville Salmon, was, I think it's what we expected. It's about the score line I would have expected. The big news for that one is that Ben Hendricks had some sort of leg injury. He was on crutches after the game. Could be a big deal, could be nothing. We'll have to wait and see later this upcoming week to see some testing. So I'll be curious to see what happens there. And then one that we didn't mention is Hannon knocked off Northlake Christian 14-13, which is big in that Hannon hasn't had a winning record at any point in the season since it's been about 5 years. So that's big for them. But most importantly for them is that team gave up a ton of points last year. And to win a game 14-13 shows that they've made improvements on that side of the ball because we know they can score points. And I think that offense will get rolling. So Hannon could be a team to watch as we get deeper into the season and sort of get into district play, see if they can grow into themselves.
For sure. Yeah, great win there for Hannon. And another notable one, they didn't pull off the upset, but they came close. De La Salle. The Cavs go to Central and keep that one really close against the defending Division I non-select state champions there. 20-13 was the final there. So that was a promising showing there from De La Salle. And speaking of that district, John F. Kennedy also went to Baton Rouge to face Scotlandville. They were able to come away with a 19-0 victory. So, anything else, guys, before we look ahead to week 2? All righty. My apologies if it broke up. Did y'all have anything else to add before we talk about week 2, or are we all good?
I think we're good. What's your game of the week for week 2, Spencer? What do you like heading into that week 2?
Right on. Yeah. We'll for sure get better at this as the weeks go on. My apologies if it's a bit slow, but yeah, week 2. Guess to start off, just gotta talk about that doubleheader at the Superdome. We got Rummel against U High, and then we got Carr against the team from Florida, American Heritage. That's going to be a doubleheader there that a lot of people are going to have their eyes on, and rightfully so. A lot of talent going to be taking the field that night. Going to have, obviously early in the seasons, I hate to use the word state championship vibe, being that's only week 2, but I mean, obviously the Prep Classic always at the Superdome, so that should be a cool double header to see there. And then we talked to Chalmette John Harrod. Not Chalmette John Harrod. Chalmette Lakeshore in week 2. We had mentioned that would be a good one to watch there moving forward. Any matchups you like next week, Chris?
Yeah, I think you kind of referenced it with the Carr playing American Heritage next week, and that's that might be one of the stiffer tests they face all year long. I'll be curious to see what American Heritage can do against that Carr defense, and I'm sure a lot of people are excited to see that matchup. Thinking about other week 2 matchups, I know Newman's playing Riverside. That might be an interesting one. And kind of speaking of Newman, I saw them play Thursday night against St. Charles, and St. Charles won that game 36-3. Kind of looked like the typical type of St. Charles team that you expect to see, with a strong run game and a good defense. And Wayne Stein talked a little bit about that, getting back to the roots of what makes that program, after maybe kind of veering away from it a little bit. Last year, at least that seems to be the impression that he gives. He's doing the offensive play calling, but with Newman, they used Jake Randall at quarterback, and he played quarterback the whole game. And he's the running back who's committed to Tulane, and I did a story on him before the year about the quality running back he is, and how he's good at pass catching, and they use him in the pass game. And then, sure enough, they get to the first week of the season, he's the one throwing the passes. And I asked Aaron Weiss after the game, how'd that come to be? And he said that's something they've been working on for about a month. So I think it was something they didn't want to unveil until the first game. So that's what they did Thursday night against St. Charles. So kind of getting back to that week 2 game, they're playing Riverside, and that's always a big rivalry game. So that's another one I'm kind of looking forward to. De La Salle plays Holy Cross on Thursday at Gormley, so that'll be another kind of interesting one. That's always a good matchup as well.
For sure. Yeah, sounds like it'll be a fun week 2 slate. So, all right, y'all. I think that's gonna cap this one off here to week 1 NOLA Preps post-game show. Any last words, Joe or Chris, before we sign off?
And don't forget about Franklinton at Covington this coming week. I'll be there, and that's going to be two teams that are coming off of big weeks, and so we got a couple of fun games on the North Shore now. Well, I guess Chalmette's in the parish. I won't take that away from them, but we got some fun games involving some North Shore teams next week.
Right on. Cool. All right, y'all. Well, I think that's going to do it. Our first NOLA Preps post-game show in the books. Appreciate everyone that watched us here on this inaugural show. So we will be back next week at the same time, same channels. And so, yeah, for Joe Halm and Chris Dabe, this is Spencer Urquhart signing off. Have a great night, everyone.